Hi, and welcome to this live reading from Fictional-ish by Natalina Reis, and this is hosted by Itsy Bitsy Book Bits. Chapter 1, Wedding Hell. Kyle. I fucking hate surprises, Livy. My groomsman, woman, knew that. When most kids loved opening gifts to find out what was inside, I was always the one oddball who spent an inordinate amount of time sneaking into closets and underneath beds to take a peek at my gifts before they were wrapped. Not out of a sense of real curiosity, but because I honestly did not want to be surprised. I didn't want my face to betray what I felt as I unwrapped them. So I practiced my expression of delight for even those disappointing or just outright awful presents, because when it came down to it, I didn't want to disappoint anyone kind enough to buy me a gift. When Livy spirited me out of the house that evening with the promise of a huge surprise, I cringed. I was sure it was some kind of bachelor party, but I was immediately horrified by the possibility I was going to hate it and thus crush my goofy but lovable best friend's well-intentioned heart. Livy was my better half. Always had been. I often wondered what would happen if she moved away. Or if I moved away. Livy was my sounding board, my go-to for anything I couldn't trust others with. We'd been through thick and thin and still stuck together in the end. I loved my freckled friend, and the last thing I wanted to do was hurt her feelings by hating whatever surprise she and my other misguided groomsmen had come up with. Will you stop fretting and move a little faster? Livy was practically pushing me in front of her as I dragged my feet toward the door of an old, nondescript building I had never seen. She had driven us there with her usual reckless enthusiasm and evaded all my questions almost as efficiently as she avoided crashing into the other unsuspecting drivers on the road. You almost killed me on the way here. Not far from the truth. My stomach was still a bit unsettled from her usual driving antics. And now it seems you want to finish the job by murdering me in some abandoned warehouse? My head shot forward as she swatted the back of my neck. If I wanted to kill you, I'd have done it a long time ago. She shoved me forward again. Let's go, Kyle. I promise you'll like it. I hated it when people said that. Livy had been acting strangely even for her. Ever since I had told her about my impending nuptials with her childhood enemy, her usual exuberant behavior had been somewhat subdued, which in itself was worrisome. I got it. At least I thought I did. She and Maya were like two betta fish sharing the same bowl. They took no prisoners. The fact I was marrying Maya could not have been easy to swallow, and to give her due credit, Livy had taken the news like a champ. But I knew that inside she was boiling. Livy had always been the kind to cover up pain with a smile, but I had long ago learned to see through those deceptive happy layers and sarcastic bite. She was not a happy camper. The front door was unlocked, and we walked into a dark corridor that led us to nowhere, it seemed. Are you sure we're in the right place? There's nothing here but dust. With a giant push, she shoved me through the wall. Well, it was really a door I hadn't seen, into a bright room. I blinked for a second as I heard the yells and hoots from a small crowd of friends. Welcome to the bachelor party to end all parties. Livy's declaration made me shiver in apprehension. Oh shit. What had she planned now? Once my eyes got used to the bright lights, I scanned the room around me. It was set up like an old British pub with a dark wood bar that ran most of the front-facing wall, a few scattered wooden tables and chairs, and Art Nouveau lamps hanging from the ceiling and jutting out from the walls. Hell, I'd never guessed from the looks of the outside that the inside was such a jewel of boozy architecture. I knew you'd like the old-world feel of this place. Livy knew me too well. It's fucking brilliant. It was. The whole atmosphere made me believe I had just stepped out of time and place. Where did you find this place? She snorted. I know people. Bullshit. You Googled it, didn't you? She was a true black belt of the Google search. We sat down side by side on a couple of the bar stools while my other friends gathered around us. I don't care how you did it. I love it. Livy jumped from the stool as soon as her butt hit the seat. But this is just a small part of your surprise, my friend. Opening her arms wide, she made a production of looking around her like an actor on stage. The committee and I have carefully planned an evening of sensual delights for our poor friend who will soon be deprived of the world at large. The small crowd whispered in fake awe. You speak as if I'm about to face a firing squad, which was quite effective at rattling me just enough that my stomach filled with rocks. You're marrying the queen of the bitches. Never one to mince words when it came to my fiancé, Livy opened her gorgeous blue eyes and wrinkled her freckled nose. Of course you're a dead man walking, so your friends decided to give you a night to remember. Are you ready? I shook my head and chuckled. Quit the theatricals, Olivia Marie, I said, doing my best impression of her mom, the only woman capable of semi-controlling my best friend. A big bang echoed through the pub, and a door opened behind the counter. Liam and Ben came through it, dramatically carrying a huge tray over their heads. They stumbled to the counter and almost dropped their burden. The tray slammed a bit too hard on the counter in front of me, a spray of liquid splashing up in the air. I present you your last meal. Livy stretched on her tiptoes so she could better look over the tall counter. Your favorite food in the whole wide world. She was exaggerating a bit, but not by much. The tray was packed with piles of chips covered in an obscene amount of chicken salt, right next to a collection of sausage sizzles, oozing sauce, and fried onions from every angle. My salivary glands went into overdrive. Livy stopped me from making a swipe at the tray. But wait! What would be the perfect drink to go with all that wonderful food? Another one of my friends emerged from the kitchen with a bucket full of beer. We all attacked the food and the drinks with great enthusiasm. The sausages were sinfully delicious, and the beer washed it all down in a wave of coolness and bitterness. I must have downed at least 3 beers before I decided I probably should stop, considering my ride, who didn't drink often, was more drunk than the drunken Scotsman. Surprised, but more than just a little amused, I watched as she stumbled all the way from the other side of the bar toward me, crashing into chairs and tables and spilling more than half of her beer on a couple unfortunate friends who were in her way. The fucking stripper canceled on us. Her words spilled out of her mouth thick and slurred. I took the beer out of her hand and placed it on the counter behind me. She waved a hand above her head and licked her lips. But no problem. Livy is here. I chuckled and held her hands in mine. What are you going to do, strip for me? She stopped moving for a moment and then let out a loud, reverberating burp. Yes, that's what I must do. I'll strip. She pulled her hands away from me and began unbuttoning her shirt. Fuck, are you crazy, Liv? No, but she was totally wasted. I grabbed her hand and pulled it away from the buttons of her shirt. You most definitely will not strip in front of all these guys. I had lowered my voice to an almost whisper and waved the other guys away from us. She bent forward until her forehead was leaning against my chest. But you'll be disappointed that the sexy stripper didn't show you her girls, and you're marrying that bitch, and... She went quiet and still, and for a moment I thought she had fallen asleep. But she lifted her face to me. I hate that you're marrying stupid Miss Perky. She suddenly sounded like her old teenage self, crying on her shoulder about something horrible Maya had done to her. I brushed my hand over her head and kissed her forehead. You knew I'd get married someday, Liv. What difference does it make that it's to Mia? It was a rhetorical question. I knew exactly what was bothering her, but couldn't do anything about it. A little sob made her hiccup. But she's a bitch. I hate her. She lowered her face to my chest again and sobbed a few more times. And what about me, Kyle? What about me? I drew her closer to me, baffled by the pain in her words, in her voice. What about you? You're my best friend and always will be. That won't change just because I'm marrying Maya. I hoped. With her mascara running down her freckled cheeks, Livy looked up at me again. But you'll never love me like I love you. She must have drunk more than I thought. Of course I love you, fool. You're my best friend. No, no, no. She pounded on my chest softly and then slipped a hand behind my neck and pulled my face toward her. You don't understand. I love you. I've always loved you. And she kissed me. The touch of her lips sent my mind spiraling out of control. We'd been friends for so long, and she picked that moment to tell me she felt that way? It was a sloppy kiss that tasted and smelled like stale beer. A kiss that filled me with guilt. I had crushed on her so hard when we were teenagers and never thought she felt the same. How had I missed it? Bad timing. Terrible timing. Livy went slack in my arms. A little snore told me she had fallen asleep, her nose smooched up against my chin as her lips slipped away from mine. What am I going to do about this? The only thing I could do, make sure I'd never mentioned this moment to her and hope she couldn't remember it in the morning. As much as I loved Livy, we couldn't happen. I was in love with her nemesis and getting married the next day. Livy had to move on. Livy. There was a sickly smell of lilacs in the air as all the guests walked slowly but purposely to their seats. I sat in the back, avoiding the time I would have to stand by my best friend and watch him marry the queen of bitches. I hated weddings in general, but this one in particular. The simple thought of Maya walking down that aisle in her perfect, way too expensive white gown made me want to puke. Maya was not my favorite person in the world. In fact, there were so many people I would name ahead of her should I ever decide to make a list of my favorite people that she would need an airplane and a GPS to find number one. Truth be told, I hated her guts. It was nothing new either. We had been BEFs, best enemies forever, since we were in primary school. The fact that we had grown up side by side did not change or influence the way we felt about each other. Maya, however, had always been really good at making others believe we were friends. My mother, who was one of her mom's friends, believed to this day we were like bread and butter. Vegemite and toast, mac and cheese, one didn't go without the other. We both knew, though, that we were more like water and oil, or fire and TNT. Throughout our years in primary school and then high school, we brought the term frenemy to a whole new level. Miss Perky, as I decided to name her during the later school years, not so much because of her temperament, but rather because her nipples always seemed to stick out of every blouse she wore, thrived on conniving new and more creative ways to humiliate me in front of the whole school, and I, in a much more subtle way, but not any more saintly, did my worst to make her sound like a brainless idiot. We spent most of those incredibly useless years in a tug-of-war where neither she nor I ever really won. That was until now. Sitting in that gloomy church with the nauseating smell of flowers hanging from every pew tickling my nose and my gag reflex, I had to admit she had me licked. Finally. Yes, she had won. Big time. In a few minutes, she would be walking down that pretentious red carpet into the arms of the guy I had loved since primary school. Kyle, the boy who had made a name for himself stuffing live worms down every girl's shirt in grade 3. I had been his first victim. When that squirmy, slimy, wiggly creature slid down my childish chest into the waist of my skirt, I nearly died. Not because I was scared of worms, but because I had no idea at the time what exactly was crawling inside my shirt. Instead of screaming like a banshee, I got Kyle in all kinds of trouble with the teacher and later the principal. Strangely enough, I took his mischief as a sign he liked me, and I was more than excited to join his bug-related trickery for the rest of our primary career. As we grew up, it didn't take me long to realize I liked watching him. That slow burn in my gut sending little shivers up my legs and arms every time my eyes met his. The electrical shocks caused by a simple brush of the fingers or his knee against mine when we sat side by side eating ice cream at the Pink Parlor bar. Even though Kyle had never actually shown any interest in me outside the Friends Forever arena, I was pretty certain he was just waiting for the right time. So imagine my surprise and total and utter dismay when I got a call from my BEF announcing her engagement to my boy. WTF? Fast forward to today in this horribly tacky church where my hope for ever after happiness would be getting married to the one person I hated the most in the world. My heart was crushed and my dreams burnt to the ground. There was no tomorrow. My cell phone vibrated, and a quick glance at the screen told me it was Kyle. What did he want? Maybe he had seen the error of his ways and wanted to tell me the wedding was off. What's going on? I asked him, my fingers crossed in desperate supplication to Lady Luck. Can you come up here? Here was the little sacristy room upstairs where he had been getting his shit together with his father and best man. Whatever the shit was that Grimm's dude had to do right before the wedding, possibly pray for mercy or for an earthquake to stop the ceremony. What's wrong? I asked, my heart filling with a new hope. I need your help. He needed my help. This was it. He wanted a way out of this freaky union, and I was just the woman for the job.